Hey now, this is the Screen Watching Podcast. I'm Dan Barrett. That guy here is Simon Foster. We talk about the movies, we talk about the TV shows. Which movies, which TV shows? Buckle in, bucko. I'm about to give you the rundown of it all. This week, we are talking about Imperfect Women. You've probably never heard of this TV show. It is the big new show from Apple TV with some bona fide big stars that are like fronting this thing. We're going to talk about that in a moment, along with Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Did anyone need a sequel to Ready or Not? Do people remember Ready or Not? These are the questions we will be asking as Simon lets us know, is the sequel any good? We've got a bunch of other things we're going to discuss this week. I'd have a bit of a chat about Buffy coming back for 2026 or not coming back and the shitstorm that has followed as a result of the pilot being, cancelled, not picked up, however you want to phrase it. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Oscars. We've got some other movies we're chatting about. Folks, it is a fulsome show. It's a wholesome show with lots of swear words. Folks, stick around.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher! Mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
All right, so this is Screen Watching. I promise swear words. We don't really do swear words on this podcast.
We're not really
so
big on
much.
swear words, are we? We've beeped ourselves occasionally. Hello, everyone. Simon Foster here, your co-host of the Screen Watching Podcast. Hope you're all very well. We don't do a lot of swearing, not on air anyway.
Not really.
I'll often drop a few after we've recorded the podcast.
Yeah. And look, I mean, generally there have been moments where I've done those sort of deep dive sections where we start talking about keep on pulling it out again.
Yeah.
Like I've done that a few times, but
Yeah, that does happen occasionally. I don't have much to review this week, Dan. You're absolutely right in your opinion on Ready or Not 2. It's the biggest release this week, but that doesn't mean it's a big release. I got very excited because in the mail this week from my good friends at Imprint Video, I got, can you see that? High Road to China with Tom Selleck on Blu-ray and Richard Gere in King David doing the nappy dance. Bruce Beresford's big flop from 1983, I want to say, famous for Richard Gere doing a dance in a nappy.
Not sure I'm that excited about that, but
It's quite a thing.
Tom Selleck, I'm interested as long as you also hear the phrase Magnum PI or Quigley Down Under.
Love Quigley Down Under. Well, he did High Road to China as sort of a get back for being not being able to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, as any Hollywood sort of guy knows. It's he was originally cast as Indy, but they wouldn't let him out of his Magnum contract to go and do the movie. So High Road to China is very much in that sort of post-Raiders, let's recapture the magic of 50s adventure story kind of things. Didn't work as well. Nobody went and saw it, at least not as many as Raiders, but it's a fun film.
Look, part of me has always wanted to see what Raiders would have looked like with Tom Selleck in the lead
Me
role,
too.
but also I know that we never would have seen more than one movie if that had been how it played out.
Probably the other great story was that actor Peter Coyote, who many of us, I guess most of us only really know him as the scientist with the jangling keys in E.T., he was almost Indiana Jones, and for his last audition, he came into Spielberg's office, tripped over a lamp, got all tangled up in the electrical cord, and Steven Spielberg is on record as saying, if we'd wanted Raiders of the Lost Ark to be a comedy, we would have cast Peter Coyote. He reckons it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen, but didn't happen for poor Peter. He got a shot at stardom in E.T., so that works out well. Look at me bringing all my film buffery knowledge.
Yeah, I've never heard the phrase buffery before, and that probably leads us into an opportunity to let's do some reviews. There's a new show on Apple TV. It's called Imperfect Women. Here's a clip.
You may have been the last person to talk to your friend.
You'll never know.
Can you tell us anything that you remember from last night?
Part of me thinks we will get through anything, right? Then the louder part of me's like, might as well burn it to the ground.
We didn't know everything there was to know about her.
Simon, I'll admit to a little bit of apprehension coming into Imperfect Women. Now, look, this isn't the best way to introduce this as a topic area, but I'm going to sort of say this phrase and hopefully it doesn't come out too gross as I let the words tumble out of my mouth. But there was a smell about these Imperfect Women.
Oh. Yeah, that's going to bounce back.
Yeah, it really will.
I'll see
Okay,
if that makes the final edit. Yep, go.
I will make it. Okay, so you've got this trio of great TV actors sort of leading this. Like when I say TV actors, I'm not being dismissive. I'm saying these are three actors that have really made their bones in the world of television. You got Elisabeth Moss. Okay, and has there been a more successful actress in the world of sort of, we'll call it prestige, high-end television than Elisabeth Moss? We're talking about the star of The West Wing. We're talking about Handmaid's Tale. We're talking about a little show called Mad Men, 3 shows back to back. And that's not even just talking about the fact that as a child star, she was recurring in Picket Fences, which is not too much of a slouch either. Although, I don't think anyone's really looking at Elisabeth Moss as the reason why Picket Fences was pretty good. But you've got them, you've got Joel Kinnaman in this as well. So, that's a decent amount of sort of star wattage
For All
for a program like
Mankind,
this.
that's a quality cast member right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been in plenty of other things as well.
Sure.
Corey Stoll's in this. Okay, and that's
the bald guy from one of those shows. What was he in that made a name for himself?
I think he broke out when it was House of Cards, also
Yes.
alongside the, fantastic Kate Mara.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Corey Stoll in this, though, he's got this bushy beard, and I didn't really recognize him until I noticed him in the credits.
He never fully recovered from playing that square thing in one of those Marvel movies. That was him, wasn't it?
Square thing?
He was in, was it Ant-Man or one of those where he played?
Oh, that's right. He was in Ant-Man, wasn't he? He was the bad guy in that.
Yeah, and he was all hidden behind special effectsy kind of stuff, and it was kind of stupid. But anyway, no,
Look,
love the Corey Stoll. This is all quality people.
Yeah, and you've got a bunch of other people that sort of crop up in smaller roles in this. Sandrine Holt, who I've been madly in love with for about 30 years now at this point. Leslie Odom Jr.'s in this. There's just this decent cast.
This is prestige TV. This is a big deal.
Yeah. We've got one more actor we'll talk about in a short while. He's not a big name, but it's just noteworthy. But big name cast, and you listen to what the premise of the show was, and I'm just trying to find the log line for us. It is, after a murder shatters the lives of 3 friends, their decades-long bond is tested when an investigation reveals the shocking truths. And what this really is that you have this trio of 3 friends who, frankly, from the first scene that you see them all together, I don't buy any of these guys as friends. But, it is what it is. But you got these 3 friends, and one of them's having an affair, and she manages to turn up dead the day after they have their drinks. So, what's gone on there? And quietly, everybody seems to have some sort of backstory and a little bit of mystery as to what's happening in their lives.
There's a murder, and there's some mystery. Am I right to guess this is a murder mystery?
That would, in fact, be the genre that we're playing.
Awesome. This is good. All right.
Broadly, we've kind of seen so many TV shows doing the same sort of thing before where everyone, they seem innocent at first. They've got a motivation. We're going to spend a few episodes going in this direction and then that direction. And then, wait, plot twist, maybe that first person has something else going on. And even the star of this, which is Kerry Washington, she's not to be trusted. We find out in a second episode, there's a couple of lost hours on the night that their friend Nancy, played by Kate Mara, up and got murdered. There's just all this stuff going on. These are all characters as well who have a lot of finance at their disposal. They are definitely sort of playing around that sort of elite space where there's lots of very fancy outfits and fast cars and, glitzy offices. Like Kerry Washington runs a charity organization, and there has never been a charity organization with as swish looking an office space as what's going on there.
A glass
it's incredible.
and concrete tower.
Yeah, look, I mean, she may as well be running Meta from what we're seeing here on the screen, but we've got all that happening, and it's a glitzy soap through and through.
That's exactly what I was about to say. This sounds like prestige junk.
Look, I don't even want to attach the word prestige to it, but it's definitely very junky. Now, the question ultimately becomes, once you realize that you're watching junk, is it good junk?
Sure.
And I'm not sure that it is. So I've gotten through the first 2 episodes, which is streaming now on Apple TV. I went to watch the 3rd episode and fell asleep on the couch. And I'm kind of planning to come back to it, I think. But also, if I get distracted by something else shiny and never find my way back to it, I'm not so invested in finding out who killed Kate Mara's character that I'm, going to go back necessarily to watch it. I just don't know. Right now, I'm planning to watch it, but maybe I don't. And if I don't care.
Boy, I tell you what, Kate Mara has a tough run getting a long-standing gig in a show. Wasn't she bumped off in the middle of House of Cards too?
Yeah,
House of Cards as well?
She was playing a character where, you're really pushing my memory on this one. I'm pretty sure that she made her way to the first episode of the 2nd season and got pushed in front of a train.
Yes.
Yes, but that is a character who, because it's based on a UK TV show,
Yeah.
that character is murdered at the end of the first season. Well, what was supposed to be the only season of the show, and then it came back for a sequel series. Yeah, so like we kind of knew that she was probably going to die, and the surprise was that she didn't die.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're looking at this, and everybody is quite good at what they do because we're looking at this really great cast of TV actors going through, but they're just where the problem really falls apart for me is the dialogue. So, sometimes you just hear that thing and it's so small and petty and innocuous, but like it just really just gets stuck under your skin and you can't really quite avoid it.
Sure do.
There's this line that Kerry Washington's character Eleanor delivers to the daughter of Nancy, which is the Kate Mara character. So she's being killed. She's trying to, console the daughter, and they're standing in like the family home, and she says something along the lines to the daughter of, "You've been part of my life for so long. I looked after you as an infant in here and carrying through." And I was like, no human being in like a touching sort of emotional moment refers to an infant. You say you were a baby, like you're actually sort of human, but the dialogue in this is so heavily overwritten and overwrought that you just get clunkers of lines like that out, and it just makes the whole experience incredibly frustrating.
All right, so you make a good point, and one that is very pertinent to me at the moment, because my better half and I sat and watched the first episode of The Madison with Michelle Pfeiffer and Kurt Russell, and we sat and watched it in silence, and we thought, is this really what Taylor Sheridan does for a living? We thought that was wall-to-wall clunkers, and will not be returning for a second episode.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that. I was literally just on ABC Radio about half an hour ago talking about the Madison. And what I said there was that you're going to fall into one of two camps. Either you connect with the sort of political, cultural elements of that program, or you just revile at them completely. And I think if you're going to connect to those sort of political, cultural elements of it, like the dialogue in that is probably going to ring reasonably true to you in a way that, coastal elites, the likes of you and I, Simon, is probably not really quite what we're looking for.
I'm quite sure people don't go out to their cabin in the woods and talk the way that family talk to each other, or the way Kurt Russell talked to his brother. We just groaned our way through it. And
you know what? Second episode eases up on that a little bit.
All right.
Okay, but I'm still not recommending that you necessarily go to it. If you bristled at that first episode, you're not really going to find much more in that
bristled,
second
baby.
episode.
All right, so Imperfect Women?
One other thing I just want to throw is, as I said, I've only watched the 2 episodes that are available here, but I'm throwing it out there because this is a murder mystery, as we've established the genre is. I would say that there is an actor that's introduced into this who isn't given a lot to do in the first 2 episodes, but it's not like the Netflix series Untamed, if I got the name of that show right. That was the Eric Bana one where he's in the forests as a forest ranger. And then you've got Sam Neill as a very big name actor who is given very little to do. And you're like, well, he's the bad guy because he's depicted as too much of a good guy here and he's not being given anything to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, yes.
So we know that. But there's an actor who's introduced into this one, and he's not a name actor by any means, but the actor's name is Jackson Kelly. He's a young guy. He is really early in his career. He has a small role as an antagonist in one of my favorite shows from like 2 years ago, Lucky Hank, which was a college-based thing.
Odenkirk. That was Odenkirk.
Odenkirk, that's right. He was like the dirtbag teenager who was causing all sorts of problems for the titular Hank in that one. But he is particularly notable as, I know you're not a fan, Simon, so you don't need to have a big cry about this, but for the rest of the world who are like really into the pit, you've got that as a TV show where there's just this constant cycle of patients coming through. But there's one patient in that first episode who left a huge mark on the audience, and it's this teenage guy who may be going to go off and become a like mass shooter. And they're really concerned about him. And he pops up a few times through that first season. But he's incredibly memorable. And I kind of feel as though there's this entire sort of phenomenon that happens in TV where you get like that one sort of breakout show that everyone's just kind of really interested in. So a good example of this is The Wire back in like the mid-2000s when everyone like caught onto that show with the DVDs coming out, and suddenly you saw all those actors from The Wire just cropping up in everything. It's like The Office, they need to cast someone. It's like, oh, let's get someone from The Wire, regardless of how suitable they might be for the role. Like you just sort of swoop come through.
And this
I kind of
Jackson
feel
Kelly.
I feel that the pit is becoming one of those sort of magnets of a thing where casting agents suddenly just going, let's get that person from the pit, and they just bring them all the way through.
You're
And
absolutely
he
right.
is one of these guys.
The,
And
the woman
just,
playing the...
Sorry, briefly, Simon. He's given nothing to do in the first episode or two. He's given like one scene, but he's kind of given a prominent scene. And then suddenly through some dialogue, we find out that he's now working for the Kerry Washington character, just, you know, doing stuff in the background. And he's just being fed through the background of these scenes.
Oh, he's coming back into it.
He's doing something.
Oh, for sure. The woman on the current run of the pit who is the sickly mother who's getting her morphined up in the bed, and the son.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know the actress's name, but she's now turned up in 2 independent films that I'm seeing popping up on my Apple store feed. So
I think that's just the ways that casting works, which is you kind of fall into like a bit of a casting circuit for a while.
Yeah.
I guarantee that actress, who's fantastic, and I don't know her name.
I don't either, but she's great.
She is coming back. You're going to see her picked up by all sorts of shows over the next like 2 to 3 years. And just on this casting thing, because we're talking about the pit, there's a actor from the TV show Shrinking, and I don't know the name of the actor. He's the guy that plays the...
Gee, we're informed today, aren't we? We've done our research for this episode.
These weren't planned conversations.
No, they were not. This was not in the production meeting.
No. So we've got this guy from Shrinking, and can I quickly bring up the actor's name? And I'd like to, because he's really quite good.
Okay, well, you're doing that. You got the name?
His name, Simon, is Luke Tenney.
Okay.
No one knows him by name. Like, people will know him as, it's that guy that's in Shining. Shrinking. So he's the guy that plays the sort of ex-war vet who's living out in the back house shack thing at Jason Segel's house. He pops up as a doctor in The Pit season 2. So there's a thing that happens in The Pit, which is really unique for a TV show, where all the characters that we kind of know from the program all finish working for the day. And so for the last like 5 episodes, 3 to 5 episodes of the season, you start seeing characters just disappear from the show because they've finished their shift. He's part of the night shift that comes in. So he becomes this main character in The Pit for like the last 3 episodes of the season. Anyway, he's fantastic. And when he came in, I could not have been more overjoyed seeing this guy, who I've never been that big of a fan of him in Shrinking, but in The Pit, he's suddenly become one of my favorite TV actors. He's fantastic. Love this guy.
Okay, so Imperfect Women's on Apple TV. This sounds like a cold, wintry, rainy Sunday afternoon binge sort of show that you can just walk in and out of at different times and recognize the actors and not really give too much of a hoot about the plot.
Also, the question I'm going to put out there is, what if you don't?
Sure. What if you don't what?
Watch.
Oh, yeah, you could do that as well. Don't tell Apple TV you said that. They love these sort of shows. Gee, they fill them with stars, don't they? They get so many name actors in there.
Look, I don't think this is terrible. And there's suddenly, like, I feel if my mum started watching this, she'd probably just eat this up. But certainly, I don't think that...
Nicole Kidman, Shailene Woodley thing from a couple of years ago that became a big hit and was they've done a second episode with Alexander Skarsgård in it. It was a big deal. 9 Little Lives or something, 9 Lives or something like that.
No, Shailene Woodley wasn't in that one, was she?
Yeah, she was. She's in the first season of it. I never saw the second.
Oh, You're about 9 Perfect Strangers.
9 Perfect Strangers. This sounds like that. That's what Imperfect.
Yeah, but was Skarsgård in that as well? Was he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was the creep, the husband who died.
No, you're getting confused.
Wow.
The problem is you're just so bamboozled by Nicole Kidman with her, I was going to say 45 films each year, but no, that's not true. Her 45 TV shows each year.
2 films a year and her 45 TV episodes, yes.
No, you're getting your 2 shows confused. So 9 Perfect Strangers and the HBO program that has Reese Witherspoon, Perfect Little Lies.
Yes.
No, that's not. I'm thinking of Perfect Little Lies.
Anyway, but are those 2 shows different?
The 2 different programs, Simon. One of them's like filmed on the Gold Coast, where
no.
Nicole Kidman was a psychiatrist.
Nicole Kidman, Alexander Skarsgård,
and that's the HBO show.
Shailene Woodley were in that one. Okay, well that's what Imperfect Women sounds like.
Little Lies, whatever it's called, Perfect Little Lies.
Perfect Little Lies, something like that.
Stranger Little Lies.
All right, I know everyone's waiting for me to talk about Ready or Not To. Here I come in.
Before we play can I ask a question before we play the clip?
If you feel you should, sure.
What's your relationship with that movie? Like, I'm sure you saw it at the cinema. Did you
Ready
like
or Not?
it? Yeah.
The first one? I absolutely understand why there's a sequel in the works, because it's got a passionate following amongst the home video viewers, and it became a much bigger hit on the small screen than it was on the big screen.
But like, does it have a passionate following? My
Yeah,
only question is, like, I appreciate that there was definitely viewership for it.
Yeah.
And like, I quite liked the first movie. I thought it was really quite good. I saw it at the cinema. It was a good one.
Yep.
Okay, and I think it did reasonably well at the cinema. Okay, but it just doesn't feel like a title that I've really heard anyone talk much about, other than in the context of Ready or Not. Yeah, that was pretty good, but no one's really sort of talk about the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely got a following and a cult following as those home invasion sort of stories kind of get. Remember, there was The Strangers. There was that other one with the Australian actress Shani Vincent, which was really good. Vincent, I think.
The thing is, though, like, I've heard people talk about The Strangers,
Yeah.
like, a lot more than I've heard people really talk about Ready or Not.
No, Ready or Not's got
It
a
just felt
following,
like something
and
that came
certainly
and went.
warranted. As I mean, in a world where things like Happy Birthday to You and where films like that get sequels, it's absolutely not inconceivable that Ready or Not
I'm not
2.
disputing the financial benefits of making a sequel to it.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, why is this happening so late? Like, it seems like it's been quite a while since that first one. And then the second one is, I actually just don't believe there's that much of a huge fan base for this as much as... But, like, we'll see how it goes box office-wise, if it actually draws people out.
Hey, Dan, play the clip.
You're all right.
You've caused quite a stir, Mrs. Nadomas. You married into that family. Now they're dead. What you didn't know is that this goes far beyond them. By surviving hide and seek, you've triggered a new game. This time against the High Council families. Double or nothing. This part will be familiar. They will try to kill you.
Welcome to our home.
Hunters, may the best family win.
Skippy, screens.
The game begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm going to come at Ready or Not 2 from a slightly different perspective to some of my reviews. Well, to all of my reviews. I'm reading a book at the moment, and I know that comes as a surprise to people who know me, but I actually am.
I didn't realize you could do that.
Yeah. And I'm reading it quite fast, and I'm finding the words quite easy to understand. It's called Conspiracy Nation.
It's a weird title for one of those My First Book, like those first-year reader books.
Yeah, well, they're usually on the teacher's lap and you're sitting there cross-legged reading along with her. No, it's called Conspiracy Nation. It's written by Cam Wilson and Ariel Bogle.
Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to buy this.
Oh, it's really, really good. It's an absolute sort of deconstruction and sort of insightful look at all the different sorts of conspiracy theories that have come out of Australia, specifically in the wake of COVID-19 and all the crazies that came out with that, with all due respect to some of our listeners, and also the how the international landscape of conspiracy theories has impacted the Australian population. I say that because the premise for Ready or Not 2, to a far greater extent than it was in Ready or Not number 1, is that the elites of this world, the less than 1% that really control all the governments and all the countries around the world, have this situation in place where if one of them gets bumped off, they get to fight for who controls everything. And that's kind of where this thing starts.
Sorry, can I ask a question here? So maybe I've just read too much into this. So are we essentially looking at the wealthy family from the first film because they've been knocked off? Now this is like triggered the fight for like their finance?
It's triggered a bylaw in the rules of the group that once that family gets knocked off, it's open slather for the remaining players in the 0.11% of that rule the world.
This to me sounds like the same sort of world building that happened after the first John Wick movie, where suddenly, all the ridiculousness that comes into John Wick.
Okay, so that is a great point, and I'm going to get to, and that's going to come up. So to read the byline very quickly, a cabal of global Satanists led briefly and very funnily by David Cronenberg, who's got this great sort of opening scene before he disappears. They all convene to finish off Grace, who was Samara Weaving, who was the surviving woman, the great Australian actress from the first film. having dodged her sort of preordained murder back in 2019, as we've established when the first film came out, 7 years ago, as you said, in exactly that tone, prior to
Actually, it was off. We hadn't recorded that part.
off camera. I know, but I was going to say off camera, off podcast. So her surviving that has sent this international Luciferian underworld into a free-for-all grab for power, pitting her and her estranged sibling Faith, played by the equally wonderful and equally good sport Catherine Newton, against just all these murderous maniacs who come in from Shanghai and Madrid and London and all these places. So when they're sort of really bringing the bloody bluster and there's murders happening, which happened quite a bit in this, this is a lot of fun. Every bit as fun as the first one was. And the first one was great fun because it was a smaller, tighter, edgier sort of film that really captures the mood and the imagination of a horror comedy and does it really well. So whenever Newton and Weaving are on screen, this is good. But without them, it becomes really bogged down in this sort of, as you point out, John Wick-style secret society world building. Elijah Wood essentially plays, I want to say, Satan's attorney, and anytime something comes up that sort of spins the cabal off in a direction they're not expecting, he starts quoting the group's bylaws, and it really weighs the film down. They never find that balance between comedy, which doesn't really work in this, and horror, which works in a bloody gory sense, but isn't entirely convincing. So this one feels really ugly and gratuitous at time. There's a couple of scenes where the young actresses really take a beating, and it sucks the fun out of the film a lot. And you've also got your mate from the pit,
Sean Hatosi.
Short Ashmore or Hatosi?
Sean Hatosi.
Hatosi, is it?
Sean Ashmore was a different guy. He's the guy that was in like X-Men 3.
Oh, yes, you're right. No, it is Sean Hatosi. You're absolutely right. So Hatosi, who's got this great villain's face, but he's a really sadistic, nasty player in this one. He plays Sarah Michelle Gellar's brother, and they're sort of the two that are maneuvering to take over the cabal and think it's sort of their right because Cronenberg was their father. And they have some very mean and nasty scenes together, and Hatosi absolutely leans into that. Really convincing as a villain, too much so, because he sucks a lot of the fun out of this film. So as someone who has seen the first one a couple of times and who has a whole network of people that I speak to regularly who love the film, shut up, Dan. I came out of this one a little bit underwhelmed. They certainly try to go bigger with it. This is a more expansive, it comes out of the house, which the first one was entirely set in, and is all set on this big sort of golf course, casino, billionaires playground type of setup. So it looks great on a much bigger screen, but it doesn't play as well as the first one.
Yeah. I kind of like some of the cast members in this one. Like you've already rattled off a whole bunch of names. Also worth noting is that Nestor Carbonell's in this one. I really like that guy.
Yeah, he has some funny moments. A lot of which are in the trailer. You know what? This is really one where the trailer gets the mood of the first film right, but then doesn't follow through with the whole 100 minutes that this one took up. So, a little bit of a disappointed. And I love these two actresses.
You mentioned David Cronenberg in it. I was thinking, you don't really get that many sort of David Cronenberg acting roles. And I loaded up his Wikipedia. I was like, oh, wait, no, I've just only seen a couple of them.
Yeah, I know.
There's
he's always
so
popping
many.
up in things. Yeah, it's very true.
Mm.
He was the bad guy. I remember him being the bad guy for Clive Barker in that Nightbreed film from back in the 90s as well, which underwent a very sort of cultish director's cut a few years after it was released. So, Cronenberg does stuff.
I knew he'd been like a recurring bad guy, I think, in like Star Trek Discovery for a bunch of episodes. I know him from Last Night as a director, which is this great Canadian end of the world thing, if people remember that film. I don't think many people do. It was quite good though. But yeah, I'm looking through his filmography here, and this maybe got 15 to 20 acting roles over the years.
He's got that great face and the hair pulled back, and he looks skeletal. The scenes he has in this one is entirely confined to a hospital bed, but he has some great scenes with Sean Hatosi and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Speaking of Sarah Michelle Gellar, chit chat time. Do you want to just flow into this?
Yeah, sure. So Sarah Michelle Gellar, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube.com are kind of across this story, so I probably won't dwell on it too much, but I have been obsessed with what's going on with the Buffy pilots, fallout that's taken place. So, Simon, I don't know how across this you are.
To the extent that I understood it happened, I don't know all the maneuverings, despite you covering it expertly in your newsletter through the week, which I skim regularly. I know that there's a lot of maneuvering going on behind the scenes that cause both the initial excitement for this, then its undoing.
Well, look, basically what's really happened is that Buffy TV program ran from, I think I'd say like 97 through like mid-2000s, so like 2004, thereabouts. I think it's 7 seasons. I came to Buffy really early in, and I'm the exact right age for Buffy in that what they were going through in Buffy as characters kind of mirrored where I was at in terms of like my actual
With
life.
the blood sucking or the slaying?
Well, there's the vampire stuff and the slaying, which is a given. But also, I was the exact right age where, as they were graduating high school, I was graduating high school, and not going to university as I'm going to university, like all that kind of thing. Like, it was just kind of the exact sort of pitch. As a result, Buffy's like a fairly fond memory in my life. I have tried rewatching her in recent years and have found it a fair bit of a struggle. All the things that I really liked about it originally, which was the snappy dialogue and all that sort of, the Joss Whedon sort of elements of it. And
Sure.
I'm not anti-Joss Whedon because of the fallout of him as a public figure in recent years. I think a lot of that's overblown and maybe just a bit, unfortunate, because I don't think anything he did is necessarily enough to rule him out from being shunned from polite society in the way that he seems to have been. I think we've all grown up for years hearing about like just awful people in Hollywood,
Well, you were telling me before the podcast you feel the same about Woody Allen too, which I think is really interesting.
No, but look, I mean, the whole Woody Allen thing, let's have that conversation off mic because I don't want to get cancelled myself. But, like Hollywood stories are just littered with this sort of, procession of people who are just a bit shouty behind the scenes. And, we kind of celebrate them for their shoutiness. But then, like, for some reason, like, just because Joss Whedon's like a bit of a dick to people, it's like, oh, well, can't work with him anymore. It's like, well, is that necessarily warranted? Not sure. But what kind of bothered me is that I think the Joss Whedon style of writing has been so heavily aped by so many other people in that sort of genre space that it's kind of just become really sort of tinny to listen to a lot of that sort of dialogue. And I find the show kind of unwatchable as a result. But getting to the whole thing, got that TV show cancelled in mid-2000s, well, brought to an end in mid-2000s. There've been comic books since then. There've been like there's like novels, like, the stories have kind of continued, but there's always been this sort of bubbling away in the background of, can we bring Buffy back as like a revival series, which is fitting for a vampire TV program for it to be revived like this.
Nice, ironic.
Yeah. Anyway, it's finally happened. And so Sarah Michelle Gellar agrees to come back into it. And, they filmed something, but immediately as soon as they announced it and I found out who was involved in this version of the reboot, because it's been tried a couple of times already, it was like Chloe Zhao. And look, I'm not a big fan of Chloe Zhao as a director. I think she's maybe just a bit precious, just generally. But I really like Nomadland. I thought that was fantastic.
I put my hand up as the only person in the world to have liked Eternals, so I got no problem with I'm going to defend that.
Eternals is the only Marvel film I haven't seen, only because I refuse to watch much of that Marvel stuff on TV, and I'll go and see it at the movies. But it was while everything was locked down, so I never got to the cinema to go and see it.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I've never felt the need to see it. But it just seemed like a weird fit. Like for what she does, which is like these sort of very sort of personal, introspective, like, analysis of like what it means to live through the human experience. Like, that is a bit strange for
maybe that's what came out of Eternals. That maybe that's an element that came out of Eternals that I responded to that I quite like, because I also like Nomadland. Wheels fell off for me badly with Hamnet. I wasn't this person. I wasn't the critic that jumped on board with Hamnet. I find it excruciatingly bad film, and as I've mentioned here, but I was keen to see how
commonly held viewpoint.
Not at all. Because of what she did with Eternals, I was kind of interested to see what she was going to bring to Buffy. But I can imagine whatever was shot and whatever came down the pipe under her watch would have been miles away from whatever Whedon did.
Well, I mean, this is always the thing, which is that, I'd be really curious to see what that pilot episode looked like. But at the same time, like, would I be watching episodes 2, 3, and 4?
Exactly,
like, probably not. Like, I suspect that the first episode would be like, well, that was a choice. and then I just get on with my life.
Now,
Whereas when you're making a TV show, you actually want people coming back for more. So they film this pilot, doesn't end up getting picked up by Hulu. Like they look at it going, look, this isn't really working for us. Criticisms of the pilot was that Chloe Zhao hadn't really directed for television before, hadn't sort of done the pickup shots that are necessary. Like there was just a lot of coverage that was missing. Like it just wasn't really quite complete.
But that's
So
fixable, isn't it? That's
fixable. So like that's fine. But part of the pilot process is that you produce something and then you can look at it, you can rework things and keep on going with it. Like that's why you make a pilot and don't just go straight to series with something. So they looked at this pilot going, look, I mean, this isn't really quite working. And then they went to the showrunner of the series, which is these two siblings, Nora and something else, Zimmerman. Anyway, they said, hey, look, these are the things that we need to change. We need to make sure that the main cast in this play a little bit older than what we're seeing here. Like they were all like 15-year-olds thereabouts. And they felt like 15-year-olds on screen, where you kind of just need them to be a little bit older for, audiences broadly to, sort of latch onto it. So they just felt a little bit young. So they were concerned about that. They were concerned about the fact that the Buffy character, which the show's very much being sold on, she only crops up at the very end of the pilot episode with one line. Yeah. So you've got that. You've got all these problems with the actual production of the pilot itself. And they're like, hey, this is going to need like a fair bit of work.
Yeah.
So they spoke to the twins. Maybe it's Ashley and Nora Zimmerman. I'm not sure. Anyway, so they go off, they do a rewrite, and Hulu look at it going, nah, this isn't really going to work for us. The pilot episode as well, it cost about $12 million to produce. So it's not a cheap endeavor. Okay. And they sort of looked at it going, look, this is at a point where we can't really sort of salvage this. So let's cut bait and go.
Yeah.
So they decide they're going to cancel it. Okay, Sarah Michelle Gellar ends up jumping onto. Sorry, I'll give some other background here, which is that apparently, and we found this out sort of afterwards, the Buffy production team had said, hey, look, we need to know by this date whether we're going ahead and doing this. Okay, and that date was Friday last week.
Right.
So cut to Saturday morning, Sarah Michelle Gellar releases an Instagram video saying, oh, look, it's pretty sad, but, they've chosen not to go ahead with the thing. Project's dead. Okay, and then midway
now,
through the week...
Is she involved in any way? Like, is she co-starring or producing or something?
As I said, like, she appears in the final seconds of the episode, apparently. And the idea was that she's going to be...
Buffy?
Yeah. Yeah, she played Buffy. That's how people know who she is, Simon.
I know that, but I thought you meant the new Buffy doesn't appear till the last...
No. So it's a continuation, so she is Buffy still.
Oh.
Okay, but the new girl is like a 15-year-old girl, and the character's name is Nova.
Right.
And look, as far as I'm concerned, in a sci-fi fantasy program, if your character is named Nova, she should be on a Planet of the Apes as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
like
this
Planet Nova and Sunnydale, like not for me.
Yeah.
So Sarah Michelle Gellar ends up sort of giving her Instagram video, which means that she apparently literally found out just she was about to do the red carpet for Ready or Not 2. With that going out. So she gives this interview midweek where she's like, hey, look, it was really shit that we found out when we did because I was about to walk that red carpet. Chloe was just about to go to the Oscars for a nominated film. We got that going on. And then she starts sort of trash talking this guy from Hulu, where it's like, the executive didn't even like our TV program. He wasn't a fan. He said that he actively didn't like the original version.
This is where I joined the story. I heard the whole thing about there's this one executive that, and I'm wondering how true that is.
Yeah. So the guy who she didn't name is this guy named Craig Erwick, who's now the head of Disney Television, effectively. Not quite that high up, but for like Hulu and then some of the other sort of verticals underneath. He's, top sort of like 2 levels from the top. Like, he's right up there.
Yep.
So he's now pretty much in charge of TV at Hulu, and he wasn't into it. He wasn't named, but everyone figured out pretty quickly who it was. Okay, and then suddenly, so Sarah Michelle Gellar releases that, and then all hell breaks loose because when you've got someone out there sort of trash talking a person that's got that much power within the network, like, they're not going to just sort of sit back and like just let her sort of have that as being the public record. So on Thursday, you've got this interview, this feature story from Kate Arthur from Variety, and she's come out and she's like, well, this is kind of what's happened. So she gives out like Hulu's viewpoint, and like it's all on background, but like it's quite clear that this has come from the executives at Hulu. And I'm like, the pilot was a bit shit. There wasn't all that coverage. They needed Buffy introduced earlier in. They wrote they produced the pilot. It's cost $12 million.
Can it go anywhere else?
Well, no, so this is the thing. So
did Disney own the rights to the Buffy
So the other
character?
thing is they're like, well, they tried reworking the script. They had 2 goes at it, couldn't do it. It was a bit shit. They chose to move on.
Yeah.
Okay. And like when you sort of hear it sort of played out like that, it's like, well, Fair enough. And then also the script for it got leaked. So the script is
Right.
floating around as well. And whether that came from the people at Hulu or if this has just happened through organic means, who knows? But it's certainly out there right now. So people with this additional knowledge can read that script, and I can send you a link to it if you want.
Please.
You can read that script and you can go, well, maybe this wasn't actually very good. So it's kind of completely betrays sort of everything that Sarah Michelle Gellar's been pushing for a while now. And then she gives this interview as part of the press circuit for Ready or Not 2, and she's like, as far as I'm concerned, people shouldn't be reading the script. It's for a pilot. Pilots are, works in progress. And I'm like,
also true.
well, but you've also been out there talking about how amazing this experience was and how fantastic a program it was. And then suddenly when the evidence of what it is sort of out in the world, you can't necessarily diminish
also
that.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when the dirt sort of floats to the top here, when the machinations behind the scenes are interesting. Well, yeah, my question is, can it be saved? If there's a huge fan surge that says, we want Buffy, might this pop up on broadcast or at Warner's or somewhere else?
Okay, so the question, can it be saved, has two answers. One, can the program as it's being conceived by Chloe Zhao and team be saved? And I feel the answer to that is no.
No.
Okay, because Hulu have definitely passed on it. Because
it's gone the way of Batgirl. It's gone the way of Batgirl. We'll never see this now.
Well, Sarah Michelle Gellar likened it to Batgirl. But
did she really?
She said it's not the same thing because Batgirl was a finished product, whereas she's like, the script is just for the pilot, whatever. Okay. So can the current incarnation of it be saved? And the answer is no. They can't shop it around anywhere because Disney owned the IP rights.
Yeah. Course,
okay,
yeah.
so they could license it to someone else, but it's unlikely because there's a huge amount of money to be made from making a Buffy TV program, just not this version of the Buffy TV program.
Yep.
So Disney aren't likely to do that. So this version of the program is probably dead. Okay, but can Buffy possibly come back? And I'd say the answer is quite likely. But where I said that there were two answers to the question of can this be saved, can the relationship with Sarah Michelle Gellar be saved? I suggest not, because two things. One, she's pretty pissed off that the show didn't get picked up. Two, she is fucking pissed off everybody at Hulu. Nobody, currently involved in the project, I think, want to be working in the Sarah Michelle Gellar business at this point.
Oh my God. I want to point out at the top of this podcast, we mentioned that we don't swear, but you just dropped a clanger. And second of all...
did I ever?
Yeah, did you ever? Second of all, I can't remember what I was going to say. All right, so Buffy is unlikely to turn up as an hour-long series anywhere in the near future.
Not in the near future, but I reckon give it 2 or 3 years, you'll see something come through. I think this has probably shown that there is an audience for it. But probably what's also worth noting, and sorry, I stepped around it briefly, the idea that Sarah Michelle Gellar's out there this week criticizing them for telling them when they did, when it was the production team that said, no, we need to know by Friday. And it's Sarah Michelle Gellar who came out on Saturday morning and made it public, which then suddenly made it difficult for the Ready or Not publicity tour. And then also for Chloe Zhao to have to face all this while she's dealing with the Oscar stuff as well. It's all on Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Did Freddie Prinze Jr. have any input?
Unknown.
Well, has there been a huge fan surge of opinion? Is this something that's lit up the internet with we want Buffy, or is that not there?
I think people are I feel like there was this initial wave of people upset they weren't going to get more Buffy.
Yeah.
Okay, but I also think that in the way that fan circles tend to start talking, I think the conversation is now going into, hey, I just downloaded and read this script. It's not very good. And then also with all the additional stuff that's been coming out, I think that broadly everyone feels like maybe it's a bit of a bullet dodged.
Yeah. I should point out that I was never a Buffy the series fan. I had Buffy the movie with Kristy Swanson and Luke Perry on Laserdisc. So that was my Buffy. I don't think Kristy Swanson's coming back as Buffy. I definitely know Luke Perry's not coming back as...
You should give the Buffy TV series a miss, but I reckon you'd like the Angel TV show.
I've watched a little bit of Angel. I like my Boreans. I did watch a little bit of Angel back in the day. Yeah. All right. Okay. So we won't be seeing Buffy anytime soon, unless you don the cheerleader's outfit.
And I do on request.
Okay.
It's a Patreon thing.
Email us at screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com if you want to see Dan in a cheerleader's outfit. At the movies this week, I had very little to watch. Stop doing that. If you're watching the video, that's not going to work. So before the screening of Ready or Not 2 on Monday evening, I caught up with a little film that's kind of disappearing from cinemas at the moment. You'll probably next have a chance to see it on your home video platforms. It's called The Moment. It is a mockumentary starring one pop starlet Charlie XCX, and it's a look in a satirical kind of way at the fame that she experienced during the summer of Brat. Now, this was the pop culture phenomenon that exploded in the wake of her Brat album launch in June 2024. That's one of the moments to which the title refers. The other is the here and now of her trying to deal with this out of control the out of control sort of greed and hangers on and sycophants and music industry types who just want to keep Brat going when the whole Brat movement just wants to go away organically. Charlie plays this really revved up, anxiety-ridden version of herself who's caught in the middle of it's kind of a last-minute Amazon Music Brat concert tour that a terrible person called Johannes, played by Alexander Skarsgård, is going to direct with the most obnoxious sort of add-ons that you see in the world of music and pop music. As a mockumentary, you hear that term, especially when you hear music mockumentary, and your thoughts go straight away to Spinal Tap, and this isn't Spinal Tap. It took me a good 40 minutes to realize where the comedy was in this and where the industry takedowns and the self-awareness that Charlie's showing to make fun of herself, and the role that Rosanna Arquette plays as the record executive and some of her hangers-on play. This is a really sly, not hilariously funny, but really cutting bit of satire about the world of modern entertainment. And it's an A24 release, and it's got all the hallmarks of a sort of a cool A24 release, but also sends that up a little bit as well. So the more I think about this, the more I really liked it at the moment. Like I say, it's by the time this podcast goes out, it's probably finished its cinema run, but it'll be on the home viewing platforms, which won't be a problem seeing it in that regard because it's a lot of handheld sort of backstage stuff and will play quite well. So yeah, it's called The Moment. I'm a Charlie XCX fan. I like what she did. I like the whole Brat movement, and this is a good way to put a red line through it all.
Yeah. I've been kind of curious about this one for a while, so
good fun. Yeah. Good music too. I like the music, and not a lot of it's in this. So if you're a Brat fan of that period in her life, going along hoping to see kind of a concert movie, it ain't that. But it is a smart sort of takedown of herself and what she does and stands for.
So Simon, during the week we had this thing called the Academy Awards. You and I, we did a live stream on Substack, which has led to many live streaming opportunities since then.
Somewhat inadvertently.
Indeed. So what I thought was just really interesting to note is there was quite a fair bit of chatter during the week about the fact that the Oscar viewership dipped this year. It was the first time in 4 years that we've seen a drop. It dropped 9%. I thought it was maybe just worth noting why it dropped, because I watched the program, and certainly in the lead-ups to the program, there was a lot of conversation about the fact that this year was a bit different for the Oscars because people have actually seen these movies. Like, it wasn't really just playing around to a lot of the art house crowd that the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of Oscars had. So there was an opportunity where, there's big names appearing at the Academy Awards, movies that people have actually seen. Like, that should in theory see a bit of a lift. Conan O'Brien was well received last year, so, that should probably work out okay. But there was a drop this year. Yeah. Anyway, there's 2 reasons why there was a drop. And I thought maybe we could just sort of, briefly chat about this, which was, first of all, in the United States, which is where we're talking about the ratings, it was last year, it was the Academy Awards happened while Daylight Savings was on, whereas this year it wasn't. That's a factor. But then also, because I think people see blood in the water around the Academy Awards nowadays, where there's less viewership than there had been, say, 20, 25 years ago, they're now counter-programming against it. So you've actually got this thing in the US where they've launched this thing, which is kind of a bit like the World Cup, but for baseball. And it's called the World Baseball Classic.
Yes. And I watched quite a bit of it, actually. Yes, I know it.
Well, on Sunday night in US, people watched a bit of it as well because there was a game between the US and the Dominican Republic, and about 7.4 million people tuned in for that one, where traditionally you wouldn't have found like a big sort of sporting event scheduled up against the Academy Awards either, because they tended to avoid doing that. Whereas these days, they're just scheduling it up there because they're like, Academy Awards, it's open game now.
Okay, I don't know And I really appreciate that you're bringing this perspective to how the Academy Awards rating is dipped, because we mentioned earlier on, prior to the podcast recording, that I was worried this could get negative, and you're absolutely right. There are reasons why it dipped out. On the Venn diagram of Oscar watchers and baseball fans, I don't know how big that middle gap is. I don't know what the crossover would be. But you're right, they're not scared to program against the Oscars anymore, and that's certainly going to have an impact.
Well, I think you said it just a moment ago, which was that you've watched a fair bit of this World Cup series. Like, there's going to
Sure.
be people that are maybe casual viewers of the Academy Awards. Not everyone's coming to the Academy Awards like you are, where, you're dressing in your, tux and,
Mhm.
you've got your glass of orange cordial, whatever it is that you have when you're, watching these things.
All
I
those
think,
things.
there's a casual viewership who'll watch it because this is just the thing to watch tonight. Whereas if they just like baseball a bit more, that's just what they've chosen to do.
Very true. Yep. Oh, very true. In the scheme of things, if you were to say year to year, any other show dropped 9%, would that be cause for concern? Is that a big number in TV viewership year to year?
Look, I mean, I think if it was a constant downhill slide,
Yeah.
that'd be a concern. But I think that, year on year, there's always going to be sort of ups and downs with something like this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you say that the films were, quite a few people saw the films. I don't think there's a Joe Public love out there for one battle after another. I think the early box office indicates that it took a long while for viewers to warm up to it, and maybe they were only just starting to watch it as a home viewing item.
Well, I don't think they were just starting to watch it because it's been available for streaming for, 7 or 8 months now. Like, it's been a while.
Yeah,
But this is it. I think that broadly I mean, you were talking about this with Ready or Not, which is that things find their audience like in home video. Certainly most people have seen one battle, saw it on a home video market.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm just saying people have seen it, and people, obviously have their thoughts one way or another on it. Clearly the Academy votership, membership, we're quite fond because,
And people love
won
Sinners
the
as well.
award.
Like, Sinners is a whole
Yeah.
other audience that the Oscars, may or may not have seen. Maybe the cool kids that were watching One Battle in Sinners, the horror fans, the, counter-revolutionaries, those sort of people aren't big Oscar watchers.
Well, they're busy staging a revolution.
Or watching baseball.
Yeah.
Well, that went well. Do you want me to do my retro review very quickly?
Sure, let's do that and then get out of here.
Okay, on YouTube this week, because I had literally nothing else to watch, as I've said a few times during this podcast, I caught up with a lovely old movie called Emo Ruo. Now, it's called Emo Ruo because if you say that backwards, it's Our Home. It's a 1985 Australian film which looked at the crisis that young families went through when they were trying to buy and finance their new home. It's a universal tale as old as time. And it starred Martin Sachs, who sort of went on to fame in Blue Heelers, but not much else, and Joy Smithers, who's lovely in this and didn't really go on to much else at all. But they play a young couple whose house falls apart around them. It's kind of the Money Pit. Watching it now, it's also kind of Raising Arizona to a certain extent. There's a little bit of craziness in there that reminded me of that. I love watching, and when I say old Australian films, I mean Australian contemporary films from the 70s and 80s, because you just get to see Sydney, my hometown, our hometown. Well, is it your hometown? Your hometown's Brisbane, really. But I guess, your hometown's Adelaide, isn't it?
We don't talk about this.
Oh, the bloodline. So you get to see what Sydney looked like back in the early 80s. They're driving across the Harbour Bridge at one stage, and there's, the signs there saying 20-cent toll, and vast expanses of the cityscape where the high rise hasn't gone up yet. So that's a joy to watch, and just seeing a contemporary comedy from this point in time and how we looked at ourselves and our society back then was a real joy. I'm not suggesting it's a particularly great film. Some of the comedy's a bit strained, and they don't really have too much to say about the suburban sprawl and how young Australians got a part of it. But I did have a joyous time watching this. Very quickly, this came about because Umbrella Entertainment sent an email out during the week saying, hey, does anyone know any obscure Australian films that we can release that we haven't got a hold on? And it led to this huge stream of people nominating Australian films that had been largely forgotten. In amongst them was Emo Ruo. So I hunted it down as a YouTube rip, and it's a good tear on YouTube, and worth having a look at. EMOH, new word RUO, Emo Ruo, Our Home backwards.
Okay. That's a great moment for us to
and we're
get out of here. Folks, this has been the Screen Watching Podcast, inadvertently streamed live on the internet. My name's Dan Barrett, joined by Simon Foster. We have our various publications around the place. Simon, do you want to give your spiel?
Screen Space newsletter is available on Substack. You can get free subscriptions or paid subscriptions. Go for paid. And all Screen Watching things can be found on Facebook at Screen Watching Podcast, YouTube at Screen Watching. Dan, what do you do?
Alwaysbewatching.com. It's a TV-based newsletter. It's about TV. It's about streaming. It's about living life in the best way you can.
Yeah, and it's a good read. And I do appreciate your positivity.
So positive. So positive. Folks, this has been Always Be Watching. We'll be back next week.
No, it
Probably
hasn't.
not
It's been
streamed
Screen
online.
Watching. It hasn't been Always Be Watching. It's been Screen Watching.
Oh, sorry. I'm just horribly distracted looking at my face on my website right now.
Such a self-promoter. God.
Very much so. Yeah. Folks, this has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week.